Hello, welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and in this episode, where I'm here with Corey Good, our Insider's Insider from the space program, we are going to be talking about the science of time even further, and I want to start to dialogue with him a little bit about some of the things that I've studied in this very fascinating subject, because when we start to get into the real-world data, things get very interesting. So, Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's kick this off by bringing in a data point from a book by a Chinese guy named Paul Dong called China's Super Psychics. And in this book, he describes working with the Chinese government where they find these children who have advanced psychic capabilities. One of the experiments that is documented in this book is a human being who had the ability to teleport a small object. And the object would appear to fade out of existence in one location, and it would fade in another location. So what the Chinese wanted to do was to figure out, okay, what's really going on here, and how does this work? So apparently they put a beeper on the device, and the beeper was set to beep in a certain time sequence at a certain rhythm. What they found was that as the object starts to fade out of existence, the beeps became slower and slower, as if time itself was changing in speed. And then it was just as slow when it shows up on the other side, and then it would speed back up to its normal rate. So, is it possible for us to be able to affect time and space as a singularity like that?
Well, we can affect time and space and matter with our consciousness, which is exactly what that person was doing.
Right.
And time and space, we'd call it space-time, time-space for a reason.
Sure.
So, yeah, that experiment showed how intertwined and related the two are, in my opinion.
Now, in Einstein's basic physics model, he does allow for time to shift, but it only can be done within an area that you're accelerating towards the speed of light, like a craft, let's say. We know that in the 1970s, they took molecular clocks and flew them in airplanes, and that they confirmed this Einstein relativistic drag is true.
The atomic clocks.
Right.
Yeah.
The real gems here seem to be that time is locally variable, that you can actually accelerate or decelerate the rate of time in a small area. Now, the conventional physicists who are watching this show, the skeptics, are going to say, oh, that's impossible. So is this part of the physics that we're going to have to change?
Definitely. I know that you're probably familiar with this, but a person doing a certain experiment has an idea of how that experiment should go, and the power of the co-creative ability and power of their consciousness causes an outcome of that experiment.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, if you kind of change that up a little bit, time, matter, space are all related, and our consciousness can make changes to matter, to time, and to space. Just as we were talking about how some people or beings have been able to change their change their location with consciousness, changing the vibration of their body to match another vibration of another location. You can also affect time. And as we're learning more and more about how this universe in reality is a hologram, we're learning, when you really learn it and believe it, just like in the Matrix, there is no spoon. then that takes away a lot of restrictions from your consciousness. And there's a lot more you can do with bending time and space and reality.
Why do you think these guys in the Philadelphia experiment allegedly got embedded into the hull of the ship? What was going on there?
Well, the vibrations, the matter of the metal of the ship was in a transitional phase, as was the bodies of the sailors, and they probably were freaking out during this out of phase, this process when things were out of phase, and they moved around, and then when they were brought back into phase, they found themselves now trapped in the metal as it phased back into what we would perceive as solid material.
Have you experienced this phase out consciousness and matter condition yourself? Did you ever get exposed to that type of a weird boundary condition?
When you're brought through a solid wall, you know that something like that has happened. So, yes. And I've seen technology used, bracelets that were taken away from extraterrestrials in the intercept interrogation program. That the extraterrestrials had, that they would turn on, and they would shake and then phase out, as if they were completely invisible and couldn't be touched.
Wow.
Well, with this technology, it wasn't meant for humans to wear. Humans tested it, and they put it on, and it shook them violently, and they broke their necks.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. Later on, they had developed technology to where these human beings were able to walk through walls. But before they fully developed it, people were exchanging their human residue and the residue of the walls. There was interchanging going on, to where some of the material from the wall was ending up a part of their body, and part of in the walls, the human. You've heard this?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, you're describing something I heard from Pete Peterson. In his division of Area 51, when he worked there, they developed a little thing that was the size of a quarter. You hold it in your hand and you push the button. You pop out of phase. They were trying to figure out how to get through walls. So they'd have these guys hold on to this little thing, take a running jump into the air, jump through the wall, hit the button when you hit the air. They would go through the wall, then they'd release the button, and they'd pop back in on the other side. The problem that he said was happening, he didn't say that it was the material of the wall, which I certainly believe could happen. He said people would get sick, and their eventual conclusion was that all the bacteria and the viruses and the natural junk that's in the atmosphere would blend in with our bodies. And normally our lungs filter that stuff out. Mm-hmm. People would get sick, they'd degenerate very quickly. And so within Peterson's division, that little thing, they said, we can't use this.
That was back engineered from what I'm talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
They eventually perfected it. They can use this type of technology to walk through walls and stuff now and not have ill effects.
You remember the guy I told you about who's autopsied some 2,000 different types of extraterrestrial bodies?
Yes.
At one point, he was attacked by people who appear to have walked into his house through his wall. And I had no data to back that up until you just said that.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if he was actually telling the truth, but now there's reason to believe that that part of the story is correct.
No, they absolutely have that ability. You can lock your doors and lock your windows and sit there with the loaded pistol, and they can come in out of phase, and
Okay.
that's technology that is available to very high level black ops groups, and for that level of technology to be used against you, you have to have most likely have done something very stupid or wrong against the program you're in.
Let me ask you the same question I asked Peterson. If you hit this button and you're out of phase with our reality, why don't you just fall through the floor? How would they get through a wall? Do they have to jump through the wall and hit the button, or is there some way that they have enough phase in their feet that they can still interface with the ground enough or something?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to.
Interesting.
That is, but then again, if you're out of phase, why would gravity pull you down through the floor?
That's a good point.
I don't know. But these guys, no, they go out of phase and they walk on the floor, they walk through spacecraft, and they just walk through the walls as if the walls aren't there.
One of the really interesting things that we have spoken about before is this parallel Earth. Now, instead of me just blabbing away on it, because we want to get you talking as much as we can, what is the parallel Earth?
Okay. This is something that I mentioned to you, and as I said, I read a little bit about it. This is something that is very sensitive information that I wasn't privy to a whole lot of information about, but it piqued your interest. I'm not sure because you had heard something about it before or what, but
well, I remember how we got into the discussion, and the original way that we got into the discussion was I asked you if you time travel back into the past and you see yourself, if you get too close to yourself, will you explode? And you said no, which surprised me, because other insiders I'd spoken to, at least one, thought that you would actually get some kind of electrical fire, some kind of interference feedback with yourself, and you'd blow up, or just... But you're saying that doesn't happen.
right.
So it is possible for people to portal back in time, and you can get right up to yourself, and nothing happens.
Right.
But then you said something was different with this parallel Earth thing.
Yes, and the type of portal.
Oh.
There was a highly talked about and rumored type of portal room that they called the Xerox room that brought you to a parallel reality, a parallel Earth. And it was not something that people wanted to go through. I certainly would not. In this one, when you're portaled through it, it makes a copy of you, sends a copy of you to this other reality, and destroys the local copy.
Oh my God.
And then there's this other copy of you in this other reality, this other Earth.
Well, I've always said I want more than one of myself so I get more work done.
Yeah.
Could you Xerox yourself and not destroy the copy?
That's built into the function.
Huh. Is it like a time paradox or something if you have two copies of yourself?
I don't know.
Okay.
And that might be a lot of what people are talking about, clones being done.
Yeah.
They may be using some sort of this technology to be making carbon copies of themselves. Anyway, these people go to a parallel reality universe to where apparently things have played out very differently. And were and weren't certain wars. Wars turned out differently. Different people were leaders.
You're saying it's Earth,
It's Earth.
but there's something different about the history of Earth.
Yes, and there are like us's there. And sometimes there are and sometimes there are not, depending on what had happened. But if you ran into yourself there and touched yourself, there was an annihilation effect.
Really?
Yeah. That was so incredibly bad that it was said that they theorized that it could rip the fabric of between the two realities or something. I can't remember all the details from the glass pad. But I don't have a whole lot of details about that. I wasn't a part of that project. There were some people that were. For some reason, it was considered a very important project. There were some very high-level people involved in it, but the Xerox room was that portal device was something that people dreaded, and was not something I would ever have agreed or volunteered to go through.
Where was the Xerox room located?
Well, there's not just one,
Oh.
but the one that I was aware of was in an underground facility somewhere here on Earth. But they supposedly have also one of these devices down at the LOC on one of their lower levels. But I have never gone below, I think, the third or fourth level at the LOC. I've never been given the grand tour that even some recent, at recent meetings, some people that have never been in the space program, secret space program, that have been there for conferences have been given the grand tour. And I haven't been allowed below the third or fourth floor.
Were some people able to go to this other reality and come back successfully?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get copied again to come back?
Mm-hmm. The process.
So now
repeats
you've
itself.
destroyed yourself twice.
Yeah.
Was there any lack of continuity in people's memories or any anomalies with their minds as a result of being destroyed and reconstructed from a copy?
Not that was reported, other than the unpleasantness of the process.
What was unpleasant about it? Just thought? Or was there a sickening feeling?
It was a painful, unpleasant process.
Really?
Yeah.
You feel your death?
I'm just saying what was reported. It was a very unpleasant, painful process.
Oh, wow.
And there are people from that parallel universe, reality world traveling here as well.
Right. Could you delineate what are the main differences in the history of this parallel Earth compared to ours? Anything that you specifically remember that was different about it?
It's hard to remember it all. I remember World War II turned out differently.
As in that the Germans won instead of America?
Right. The Axis powers won. At one time, I remembered a lot of the details that I read that were in that. It was a short summary that I was given access to. I wasn't given a lot of information. And
the insider that you introduced me to, who in the beginning you had so many things in common with and so many things that he knew that nobody else knew, who you'd ever met online,
mm-hmm.
he said that that Earth didn't have Roswell and had far less interaction with extraterrestrials than we have in ours. Did you ever encounter that information?
I encountered that information, but I can't remember from which source I got it.
But he did say the same thing that you're saying, which is that, in his opinion, it was a very important project and that we were both helping each other in some way.
Yes.
He said that they had much less of the kind of advanced technology
Yes.
that we did, and so we were trying to get them some of that. Do you think that in order to get people to do this, they have to kind of bring in a newbie Somebody who hasn't heard the scuttlebutt about how horrible it is and about how dangerous it is?
No. These people consider this a very important mission, and they're very dedicated to it.
Really?
Yeah.
And one of the key things, which I think you did say to me before, not in this taping, was that this parallel Earth is not doing too well as far as war and stuff. It's like in a much worse shape in that sense, right?
Yeah, it's supposedly really dreary, hopeless kind of place to be.
So almost like a New World Order that worked, like a worldwide fascism kind of thing.
Right.
There are some people in Jenny Randall's book, Time Storms. She has a whole bunch of stories about natural time slips, she calls them. There's a kid that goes missing. 3 days later, he pops up in the garden, and they've searched that area hundreds of times, and there he is. A bubble of light shows up, and modern people would probably say, hey, that's a UFO sighting. And then they get a missing time experience. Oh, well, I lost 4 hours. So some of those might be UFOs, but some of these could be a natural portal. Would you agree?
Exactly.
Jenny Randall's also describes some people going through these time slips, and that, like, there's a piece of furniture in their house that's now different, or the walls are painted a different color, or a window has curtains that didn't have curtains, or that there's a stone path from their front door to the street that wasn't there before. And everybody laughs away at this. So is it possible that if we muck around by accident in a time slip, that the actual reality that we're in could just sort of reconstruct around a slightly different theme like that?
The people that were involved in these type of time experiments, they were on the lookout for these types of things. They were to report them immediately if they noticed things like that. Like, they would go to hang their toothbrush up in their little toothbrush hanger, and all of a sudden it's on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the mirror. Weird things like that started happening to the people that were involved in some of these temporal experiments. And that's pretty interesting. I hadn't heard of that book, but little things like that. It's interesting you bring that up, but those were some things that these people were told to keep an eye out for and report immediately if they encountered.
Do you think that these bubbles that people, and I understand you haven't read the book, but these bubbles are on the move, and there's cases of like a guy smoking a cigarette, and when people say that a UFO shows up, they say there's no sound. I don't hear birds, I don't hear the wind, I don't hear anything. Could it be that lack of sound in these UFO contact experiences is because time has changed, and as the bird is making its cry, it's so slow now that you can't hear it anymore?
No, that is absolutely what's happening.
Wow.
That is absolutely what is happening. That's when UFOs that have landed in people's front yards, and there have been people that have reported people out standing in their front yards motionless, cars driving down the streets that just stopped, and things like, birds in midair stopped. It is absolutely, they have found a way, they're manipulating space and time. So, absolutely, yes.
Well, I want to thank you for getting into this fascinating discussion with me. We are by no means done with talking about time. We have a whole year worth of half-hour episodes to fill up, and there is so much more that I want to talk to you about with this, because this is a very big subject, and all kinds of interesting stuff coming up in our next episode. And I thank you for watching.